The Galactic Council chamber was silent. 1,000 alien eyes stared at the hologram floating in the center. It showed a blue and green planet, half covered in clouds, its oceans glowing under the sun. "Earth," the elder speaker said. His voice echoed across the great chamber. "The world no cadet survives." The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some whispered, some hissed. A few even laughed. Earth was a legend among the stars. A cursed world where storms ripped mountains apart, where beasts hunted in packs, where gravity crushed even the strongest species. The Academy had tried many times. Every alien cadet sent to Earth had failed. Harsh winds, burning deserts, frozen wastelands, predators with teeth sharper than plasma blades, the elder continued. No cadet has ever endured this world. No cadet ever will. The chamber doors slid open. Metal boots struck the floor in steady rhythm. The sound was small against the vast chamber, but it cut through the whispers like a blade. A human walked in. She was tall, though not as tall as the lizard-born or the armored insectoids. Her armor was dented, scratched, and scorched, as if she had already survived a dozen battles. Across her shoulder was the faded symbol of Earth. Her dark hair was tied back, her jaw set. Her eyes burned not with fear, but with defiance. The council stared. Some sneered. Some laughed again, but their laughter stopped when she spoke. Guess I'm the exception. Her name was Aria Kane. She was the first human ever accepted into the Galactic War Academy. From the first moment, the other cadets hated her. The scaled warriors whispered that she was too small. The machine-born cadets claimed her flesh was weak. Even the instructors doubted she would last a week. But there was one test no cadet could fake. The gravity crucible. The crucible was the Academy's most brutal trial. Inside a sealed chamber, the gravity could be raised to crushing levels, 10 times what most species could endure. It was designed to push cadets until they collapsed, to measure their strength, discipline, and survival instinct. No alien cadet had lasted long. Most failed in minutes. Some were carried out broken. On the training floor, the cadets gathered in a ring around the crucible. The walls hummed with power as the chamber powered up. "She will shatter in seconds," one alien whispered. "She will beg for mercy," another said. Aria stood alone at the entrance. Her fists were clenched. Her face was calm, but her heart thundered in her chest. She knew every eye was on her. She knew they wanted her to fail. That was fine. On Earth, you survived not because the world wanted you to, but because you refused to give in. The gate hissed open. She stepped inside. The door slammed behind her. The floor vibrated. The chamber lights flared red. Gravity shifted. Her knees bent as the weight pressed down. Her lungs struggled to pull air. Most cadets would have already staggered. Aria took one steady breath, then another, and another. "Level 1, engaged," the instructor announced. Aria raised her head. She took a step forward. The crowd outside murmured. "Level 2, the voice said. The pull grew stronger. Her bones groaned. Her muscles burned. She thought of Earth, of running across rocky ground while storms chased her, of climbing cliffs while the wind screamed, of fighting wild beasts with nothing but sharpened sticks. This weight was nothing compared to that. She took another step. Level 3, sweat rolled down her face. Her vision blurred. She clenched her teeth and pushed forward. Outside, the alien cadets were no longer laughing. Some watched in silence. Others leaned forward with wide eyes. Level 4. The air inside the crucible felt like stone pressing against her chest. Every step was agony. Her legs trembled. But she remembered her mother's words from Earth. "On this world we do not stop. We endure." She took another step, then another and another. The crowd was silent now. Even the instructors stared. Level 5. The weight grew unbearable. The chamber floor shook. Aria's legs buckled for a heartbeat, but she forced them straight again. She raised her head. She smiled through the pain. Outside, one alien cadet whispered the words, "No one else dared." She might survive. The instructor's hand hovered over the emergency cutoff switch. No one had ever reached level 5. No one was supposed to. But Aria kept walking, step by step, against a weight that should have crushed her flat. Her vision dimmed. Her arms shook. She forced one foot forward, Then she lifted the other. Her body screamed for mercy. Her mind screamed back in defiance. One more step, one more breath. The chamber roared with power as the crucible pressed harder and harder. The door suddenly opened. The test ended with a thunderous clang. Arya stumbled out, sweat-soaked and shaking. But she did not fall. She lifted her chin, met the alien stares, and stood taller than ever before. Silence hung heavy in the training hall. The human had survived the crucible. The alien cadets could not speak. The instructors could not explain. For the first time in the history of the academy, the impossible had happened, and that was only her first day. Fade to black. The training hall still buzzed with whispers long after Cadet Arya Kane stepped out of the gravity crucible. No alien had ever survived beyond level 3. She had reached level 5. She had walked out alive. To the alien cadets, it was not possible. To the instructors, it was not logical. To Arya, it was nothing more than another day carrying Earth on her shoulders. That night, as the Academy's artificial moons circled overhead, the other cadets gathered in private groups. Their voices were sharp, filled with fear and anger. "Humans are unstable," hissed a scaled warrior. "She is too dangerous. They brought her here to shame us," spat another. The insectoid cadets clattered their mandibles. "If she can endure the crucible, what will she do in war?" Even the instructors debated in hushed voices. One of them, a grey-skinned veteran of many battles, shook his head. "Earth breeds monsters. That girl is living proof. If she is allowed to rise, humanity will follow. And we are not ready for that." The council's spies listened, their glowing eyes recording everything. The debate spread beyond the academy walls, across the stars, into the halls of power. The name Arya Kane was already a storm, but while the galaxy whispered, Arya lay awake in her bunk. The bed was soft, too soft. She missed the hardness of stone floors, the weight of Earth's air pressing down. Here, she could not hear the howl of storms or the growl of beasts in the dark. She closed her eyes and remembered the world that had shaped her. On Earth, survival was not training. It was breathing. She remembered standing in a burning desert, the sun like fire on her skin. She remembered crossing frozen plains where the cold bit through bone. She remembered lightning splitting the sky, thunder shaking the ground, wild rivers pulling her under. She remembered claws and fangs and hunger in the night, and she remembered surviving it all. The next day, the instructors summoned the cadets to the outdoor training fields. Vast steel towers rose into the sky. The air shimmered with energy barriers. "Today you will run the gauntlet," barked an instructor. "Obstacles, traps, simulated attacks. You will fail. That is expected. You will learn." The alien cadets nodded, ready for their challenge. They had run trials before. None of them expected anything more than exhaustion and bruises. But as they entered the gauntlet, the difficulty was raised higher than ever before. Spiked drones launched from the towers. Plasma bursts cut through the air. Barriers shifted without warning. The ground opened into pits. Alien cadets stumbled and fell. Some cried out as drones knocked them flat. Others curled into balls, waiting for the trial to end. Arya ran forward. Her movements were sharp, fast, almost wild. She ducked low under a plasma bolt, rolled across gravel, leapt over a pit. A drone fired at her back. She twisted, grabbed a loose shard of metal, and smashed it from the air. Sparks exploded. The crowd watching from above gasped. "She fights like no one else," an instructor whispered. "She fights like Earth," another said. The alien cadets struggled around her. A scaled warrior swung too slow. A drone clipped his shoulder and sent him spinning to the ground. An insectoid screamed as a barrier crushed one of its armored legs. Arya kept moving. Her instincts were not trained. They were born. She fought the way storms fought, with no pattern, no hesitation. When she reached the final tower, 2 massive drones descended together, heavy as tanks, weapons glowing bright. The instructors exchanged quick glances. That was not supposed to happen. Someone had raised the difficulty again. The drones charged. Arya dropped low. The first beam cut across the ground, throwing dirt into the air. She darted behind it, climbed its armor, and ripped out a glowing power core with her bare hands. The drone collapsed in smoke. The second drone fired. She spun, hurled the stolen core, and the explosion ripped the machine in half. The field was silent. Then the cadets erupted in shouting. Some in fear, some in awe. The instructors could not speak. Arya stood in the center of the smoking battlefield, chest heaving, eyes blazing. She had survived again. She had conquered the gauntlet. Above, in a hidden chamber, 3 senior officers watched through a screen. She cannot be allowed to continue, one officer said. She is too dangerous, another agreed. The third leaned forward, his eyes narrow. That she will not continue. The next exercise is live combat simulation. She will not leave it alive. The decision was made. Arya wiped the sweat from her brow. She felt the weight of every stare on her back. She knew she was no longer just a cadet. She was a threat. She had no idea that assassins were already waiting. For her, in the shadows of the next trial, fade to black, night fell over the orbital academy. The station's great windows looked down upon Earth, its blue oceans glowing under moonlight. For most cadets, the sight was peaceful. For Arya Kane, it was a reminder. That world below had forged her. That world below had nearly killed her every day of her life. That world below had made her unbreakable. She sat on the edge of her bunk, tightening the straps on her boots. Training had ended hours ago, but her body still buzzed with restless energy. She could not sleep. She could never truly sleep in this place of silence. On Earth, sleep was always shallow, ears alert for storms, for predators, for danger. The corridors outside her quarters were quiet. Too quiet, Arya's instincts prickled. She stood and listened. A faint scrape of metal on metal echoed through the hallway. Boots, but not marching boots. These steps were slow, careful, deliberate. She reached for the small combat knife hidden under her pillow. The instructors had banned personal weapons. That only meant they had never grown up on Earth. A human without a weapon was prey. And Arya was no prey. The lights flickered. Shadows stretched across her door. The panel hissed open. 3 alien cadets slipped inside. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and their hands carried curved plasma knives that shimmered with heat. These were not sparring blades. These were meant to kill. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then one of the assassins hissed, "You should not exist, human!" They lunged. Arya rolled sideways as the first knife slashed across her bunk. The sheets hissed and smoked. She came up low, driving her shoulder into the attacker's chest. The alien stumbled back, shocked at the force. The second assassin swung at her neck. She ducked under, slammed her knife into the alien's thigh, and twisted. A howl filled the room. The third cadet tried to flank her. She grabbed the metal frame of her bunk and swung herself around, boots crashing into the alien's chest. The cadet flew into the wall, armor denting from the impact. All 3 hissed in rage, regrouping with blades raised. Arya's breath came fast, but her mind was cold and sharp. On Earth, predators never attacked alone. Wolves, raptors, packs of hunting beasts. She had fought them before. She knew how to break them. The first lunged again. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist and slammed it into the wall. The plasma blade cut deep into metal, stuck fast. Before he could pull free, she drove her knee into his ribs. Bones cracked, the second circled behind. She felt the heat of his knife near her back. She spun, using the injured alien as a shield. The blade sank into his partner's side. Both collapsed in a tangled heap. The third cadet shrieked in fury, charging with both hands on his weapon. Arya let him come. At the last second, she dropped flat, sweeping his legs out from under him. He crashed face first into the floor. She pressed her boot on the back of his head, knife at his throat. The room went still. "Try that again," she whispered, "and you'll never walk out." The alien froze. His breath rasped under her weight. Slowly she pulled back, letting him stumble to his feet. The other 2 groaned, bleeding but alive. The door hissed open again. This time it was not more assassins. It was the Academy's surveillance drones. Their lenses glowed red, recording everything. Arya froze. Her chest heaved. The assassins looked up in terror. The drones projected the scene in real time to the instructor's command room. The feed showed Arya standing over 3 defeated cadets, knife in hand, their plasma blades scattered across the floor. Instructors watched with wide eyes. Some were horrified, others whispered in awe. "She fights like no other species," one said. "She fights like Earth itself," another whispered, but not all were impressed. In a hidden chamber, senior officers observed with cold expressions. "Even unarmed, she is too dangerous," one officer said. "She survived an assassination attempt," another replied. "That alone makes her a threat." The third officer leaned forward, voice hard. "The council will see this recording, and when they do, they will not ask for her expulsion. They will ask for her execution." Back in her quarters, Arya wiped blood from her cheek. Her knife trembled slightly in her hand, not from fear, but from the thrill of survival. She looked at the drones, their red lights blinking. She knew what they had seen. She knew the whispers in the halls would grow louder. She knew more knives would come for her in the dark, but she also knew something else. She was still alive. And on Earth, being alive meant victory. The drones clicked off and flew away. The silence returned. Arya stood at her window, staring down at her homeworld, glowing in the dark. She whispered to herself, "If this is what it takes to be part of their galaxy, then let them come." What she did not see were the council members, already watching her recording. Their alien faces filled with shock and fear, and what she did not hear was the quiet order given in the highest chamber of power. "Next time, do not fail. Kill the human. Fade to black." The holographic chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with silence. Every member, scaled, feathered, armored, or machine-born, watched the same recording. On the screen, a human girl stood inside her quarters, knife in hand. Around her, 3 alien cadets lay broken and defeated. The footage showed everything. The surprise attack, the speed of her counters, the way she used instinct and fury to outmatch opponents armed with plasma blades. When the recording ended, the silence was heavier than before. Finally, a voice broke through. "She is not a cadet. She is a weapon," another counselor hissed in agreement. "Her kind should not exist among us. If one human can fight like this, what happens if Earth unleashes more?" The chamber's walls pulsed with light as voices rose, arguments crashing against each other. Some demanded immediate execution. Others whispered of opportunity. "She is dangerous. She is proof. She is chaos. She is survival itself." At the center of the debate, the High Speaker raised a clawed hand. The chamber fell quiet again. His eyes glowed as he stared at the frozen image of Arya Kane, standing tall over her fallen enemies. "Humanity," he said slowly, "was never meant to walk these halls. They were tested before. Their world was declared unfit. Yet this one girl walks out of the crucible alive. She conquers the gauntlet. She survives assassins. You call her dangerous. I call her inevitable." The councillors shifted uncomfortably. "She is one girl," a machine-born delegate argued. "One anomaly. Destroy her and the problem ends." The High Speaker shook his head. "No, she is not an anomaly. She is Earth itself, wearing human skin. If we destroy her, we declare war against the very planet that made her." The words rippled across the chamber. For a long moment no one spoke. Then another voice cut through, deep and commanding. "Perhaps war is exactly what we need." All eyes turned toward the Fleet Admiral. His armor was black as void, his medals shining like distant stars. He had commanded ships for centuries, leading fleets against pirates and outer raiders. His reputation was cold, ruthless, and unquestioned. He stood tall, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Our borders are under threat. Beyond our reach, hostile empires grow stronger. They send scouts into our systems. They test our defenses. Soon they will come in force. We need new strength, new weapons, new instincts." He pointed at the image of Arya Kane. "This human girl is the answer. She fights without hesitation. She survives without technology. She wins when others fall. We need that." The chamber exploded in protest. "Impossible. Reckless. She is untrained. She is uncontrollable." The Admiral ignored them all. "You fear her because she is different. I see what she could become. With her at the helm, a new kind of warrior might rise. And we will need such warriors when the enemy comes. The High Speaker narrowed his eyes. What are you suggesting? The Admiral's voice dropped, but every word struck like thunder. I want her assigned to me. I want the human cadet tested in the field. Not training simulations. Real combat. A live mission. The chamber froze. No, several counselors shouted at once. Absurd. She will betray us. She will fail. The Admiral stared them down, unblinking. Or she will save us all. Either way, we will know the truth. For a long time, the council debated. Arguments raged back and forth. But in the end, the fear of the coming war weighed heavier than the fear of one human girl. The decision was made. Cadet Arya Kane would be removed from the Academy's safe walls. She would be placed under the Admiral's command. And she would be tested in ways no cadet had ever been tested before. That evening, Arya was summoned to a private chamber. The Admiral himself stood waiting, a giant compared to her. His face was unreadable, his eyes sharp as steel. You are strong, he said simply. Stronger than most. But strength without purpose is nothing. He gestured to the great window behind him, where the stars burned bright. Out there waits an enemy fleet. We do not yet know their name, but we know their weapons. They will come soon, and when they do, we will need something new. Arya stood tall, though her heart pounded. And you think that's me? The Admiral's expression did not change. We will find out. The door behind him opened, revealing a vast hangar. Inside rested a warship unlike any she had ever seen, colossal, dark, silent. Its frame was jagged, unfinished, but its power thrummed like a heartbeat. This vessel has rejected every pilot who tried to command it, the Admiral said. It remains cold, lifeless, but I believe it waits for someone different, someone unpredictable, someone human. Arya's eyes widened as the ship's lights flickered faintly, as if it had heard his words. The Admiral's voice dropped to a whisper. Step aboard. Show us if Earth itself flows in your veins. Fade to black. The hangar lights burned bright against the dark steel walls. The colossal warship rested at the center, silent and still, like a sleeping giant. Its black hull was jagged, unfinished in places, but its size dwarfed every vessel around it. Towers of scaffolding and cables hung from its sides. It was a beast waiting for life. Cadet Arya Kane stood at the threshold, staring up at it. Her chest tightened. She had seen ships before, sleek patrol cutters, heavy troop carriers, even training frigates. But this vessel was different. It radiated power, like the very air around it bowed under its presence. The Fleet Admiral walked beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. His deep voice carried in the hollow chamber. This ship was built as an experiment. It was meant to be faster, stronger, more intelligent than anything in our fleets. But it refused every pilot who touched its core. Neural links shattered. Systems locked. Crews abandoned it. We call it the Ghost of Iron. Arya tore her eyes from the massive frame and looked at him. And you want me to try? I do not want. I require. The Admiral's expression was as unreadable as ever. The Council fears you. I see potential. If you fail, you will die. If you succeed, you may carry a fleet on your shoulders. Step aboard, human. Let us see which it will be. The hangar platform lowered her to the ship's entry hatch. The air inside was colder, filled with the faint hum of dormant systems. The corridors were empty, walls dark with unlit screens. She moved slowly, her boots echoing against the metal. It felt less like a ship and more like the skeleton of some ancient creature. At the heart of the vessel was the core chamber. A single chair rested at the center, surrounded by a circle of glowing conduits that pulsed faintly, like veins. This was where every pilot had failed. Arya stepped forward. The conduits brightened at her presence, her breath caught. She lowered herself into the chair. The neural crown descended, resting across her head. Her vision swam as the ship's systems reached for her mind. For an instant, she felt as though she was drowning in black water. Voices, cold and mechanical, whispered through her thoughts. Reject, reject, reject! Her body tensed. Her heart pounded. Then she remembered Earth. She remembered standing on a cliff as storms lashed her body, refusing to bend. She remembered staring down a predator twice her size, refusing to run. She remembered lifting herself again and again when her body screamed to fall. She whispered into the void, "I do not break." The voices stopped. The conduits flared with light. Systems awoke across the ship. Engines roared to life. Shields shimmered into existence. Panels across the hangar walls lit up as alarms blared. The Ghost of Iron had accepted a pilot. For the first time in its existence, the warship was alive. Above in the control room, instructors and officers jumped to their feet. Screens showed the warship system spiking to full power. The Admiral did not move, but his eyes gleamed faintly. "She has done it," one officer gasped. "She has bonded," another whispered. The Admiral's voice cut through the shock. "No, she has only begun." Inside the ship, Arya felt everything. She felt the weight of its engines, the reach of its sensors, the pulse of its weapons. The warship was no longer a machine. It was an extension of her body, her will. She could feel the cold void outside, as if it pressed against her skin. She could see the stars with her eyes closed. She stood, or perhaps the ship stood with her. Together, they were one. A deep tremor shook the hangar. Red warning lights flared across every screen. Officers turned to their stations in panic. "Unidentified fleet detected," a voice cried. Long-range scans confirmed multiple vessels entering the system. Arya opened her eyes. The ship's sensors fed the image straight into her mind. Black-spined silhouettes slid out of hyperspace, the jagged hulls bristling with weapons. "Dozens of them, maybe more," the officers shouted. The Admiral's jaw tightened. "They come sooner than expected," he muttered. "And our fleets are scattered. The Academy is undefended." He turned to the warship below, its black hull glowing faintly as its systems pulsed in rhythm with Arya's heart. "This is no training exercise," he said. "This is war." Arya's voice echoed from the ship's comms, stronger than she felt in her bones. "Then send me out." The Admiral hesitated for the first time. "You would face them alone?" Arya's lips curved into a thin smile. "On Earth we face storms alone every day. This is no different." The hangar shook again as enemy ships began moving closer, their weapons charging, their shadows falling over the Academy station. The Admiral raised his hand. "Release the Ghost." The clamps holding the warship disengaged. The hangar doors opened to the void. Arya gripped the controls. She felt the ship's engines begging to roar. She launched into the black, straight toward the incoming fleet. The Academy trembled as the first enemy salvo fired. Beams of burning light tearing across the void, and the Ghost of Iron vanished into the storm, fade to black. The Ghost of Iron tore out of the hangar, its colossal frame vanishing into the void. For the first time in history, the warship had a living pilot. And for the first time, that pilot was human. Cadet Arya Kane gripped the controls, though she no longer needed them. The ship's systems were inside her mind, every sensor and engine feeding into her thoughts. She could feel the cold void against the hull, taste the ion trails of the enemy ships, hear the pulse of her weapons humming like a heartbeat. Before her, the dark shapes of the hostile fleet grew larger. Dozens of vessels spread out across the stars, bristling with jagged weapons. Their hulls were covered in spines and shifting plates, as if the ships were alive. Red lights burned in their cores, glowing like eyes. Behind Arya, the Academy station trembled. Its defenses were minimal. The alien cadets inside watched the feed with wide, terrified eyes. The instructors barked useless orders, knowing they had no fleet to stop what was coming. Arya's voice echoed across the comms, calm, cold, earthborn. "Stay behind me. I'll keep them busy." In the command chamber, the fleet admiral stood unmoving, his eyes fixed on her ship. Officers shouted warnings, begged him to recall her, but he did not move. He knew this was the test. Either the human cadet was Earth's weapon, or she would be its funeral. The enemy fleet opened fire. Lines of red energy cut through the void, beams so bright they lit the Academy windows. The Ghost of Iron should have been vaporized in seconds. But Arya's instincts screamed before the shots came. She threw the ship into a dive, engines flaring. The beams missed by inches. The cadets watching gasped. She pulled hard to the left, twisting between salvos. The Ghost moved like no warship should. It was a giant, but under her command, it darted like a predator, cutting across enemy fire in wild, impossible angles. The first enemy destroyer loomed ahead. Its spines glowed, charging another strike. Arya whispered through clenched teeth, "On Earth you strike first." She fired. The Ghost's cannons thundered, ripping through the destroyer's hull. The alien vessel split in two, flames spilling into the void. For a heartbeat, the battlefield went silent. The cadets inside the station cheered. Then the rest of the enemy fleet surged forward. "Too many!" an officer cried. "There are too many of them." But Arya did not retreat. She darted straight into their formation. Plasma lit the darkness as enemy ships fired wildly, trying to track her impossible maneuvers. She skimmed close to their hulls, weaving through fire, using the enemy's size against them. One frigate fired too late, striking its own ally. Both ships spun apart in explosions. Arya smiled. She remembered the way Earth's predators fought, reckless, brutal, unforgiving. She would fight the same. But for every enemy that fell, 3 more closed in. Their weapons cut closer and closer, and even the Ghost's shields groaned under the strain. Sparks danced across her console. Pain stabbed her mind as the neural link burned hotter, demanding more of her body. She gritted her teeth. Not yet. Not today. Inside the academy, the cadets leaned forward, their fear mixed with awe. Some whispered the unthinkable. She fights like no one else. She fights like humanity. The fleet admiral remained still, but deep in his eyes a fire burned. He had gambled everything on this one cadet, this one ship, this one chance. If she failed, the system would fall. If she succeeded, the galaxy itself would change. Then the battlefield darkened. From hyperspace, a shadow emerged, the enemy flagship. It was larger than the entire Academy station, a mountain of black steel and spines. Its weapons glowed brighter than stars. The smaller enemy ships pulled back, forming a shield around their master. The cadets inside the Academy fell silent. Even the instructors stared in horror. That thing could destroy a planet, one whispered. The flagship's main weapon began to charge, a sphere of burning light forming at its core. Its target was clear. Not the Ghost, not Arya, the Academy station itself. Thousands of cadets, instructors, staff. If it fired, the Academy would vanish in seconds. Arya's eyes locked on the glowing core. Her breath came sharp and steady. She tightened her grip on the controls, though she no longer needed them. The ghost of iron pulsed with her heartbeat, ready to follow her anywhere. She whispered almost to herself, "On Earth, you don't wait for storms. You run into them." Engines roared. The Ghost turned toward the flagship. Alone, against a monster 10 times its size, the Admiral's voice broke the silence in the command chamber. "Gods help us all." The flagship's weapon reached full charge. The screen went white, fade to black. The void was silent. But every soul inside the Academy could feel the weight of death bearing down. The alien flagship hung in the black, its vast hull blotting out the stars. The glowing sphere at its core pulsed brighter, charging with power enough to rip the Academy and everyone inside out of existence. Cadets whispered prayers. Officers barked frantic orders. The fleet admiral stood motionless, his jaw like carved stone. His eyes were fixed on one small shape, moving against the Titan's shadow, the ghost of iron. Cadet Arya Kane sat in its core. Her pulse synced with the ship's systems. She could feel the flagship's weapon building, could feel the hum of energy vibrating through the void like a drumbeat of doom. Her thoughts burned, her muscles trembled, but her voice on the comm was steady. "They won't fire on my watch." The Ghost's engines flared. The warship shot forward like a spear thrown into the dark. Enemy frigates surged to intercept, firing beam after beam. Arya cut through them like a storm, tearing trees from the ground. She skimmed within meters of enemy hulls, forcing them to fire too wide or too late. Explosions lit the black behind her, but she did not look back. The flagship grew larger in her vision, its glowing weapon nearly complete. Every instinct screamed at her to turn away. But Earth had taught her long ago, fear is fuel. She pressed harder. Inside the Academy control room, the officers shouted in disbelief. "She's going straight for the core. She won't make it." "Someone stop her." The Admiral's hand cut the air. His voice was iron. "Let her fight." Arya broke through the enemy screen. The Ghost's cannons blazed, striking at the flagship's armor. Explosions rippled across its surface, but the Titan did not slow. Its spines bristled, counter-batteries firing in every direction. Shields screamed as impacts rattled the Ghost. Pain seared Arya's skull as the neural link flared, but she forced herself onward. She felt her ship stagger, but she refused to break, her teeth clenched. On Earth, storms don't show mercy, and neither do I. She dove beneath the flagship's belly, dodging a barrage that could have cut moons in half. Her cannons raked across its underside, tearing chunks of spined metal free. But the glowing sphere only grew brighter, now burning like a small sun. Time was running out. Inside the Academy, the cadets' faces were pale. Their lives now balanced on a single human's hands. One whispered, "She's insane." Another corrected, voice trembling, "No, she's human." The flagship's weapon reached its peak. The entire ship shook as energy overloaded its massive coils. The glowing core angled downward, locking on the Academy. Arya saw it. She felt the heat in her bones. Her breath came in sharp bursts. She had one chance. One reckless, impossible chance. "Ghost," she whispered to the warship itself. "With me," the ship responded. Its engines roared like thunder. Its cannons burned hotter than ever. The bond between human and machine tightened until they were one. She hurled the Ghost of Iron upward, directly into the heart of the charging weapon. The flagship unleashed its fury. The beam erupted, a burning column of death that filled the void with blinding white. The Academy shook as its shields strained against the wave. Entire decks flickered and went dark. Cadets screamed as the station groaned, metal straining against annihilation, but the Ghost did not fall. Inside the beam, its shields flared, cracking and screaming, but holding. Arya felt fire tearing through her veins, the neural link burning her mind raw. Every heartbeat felt like knives in her chest. Still, she pushed harder. The Ghost's cannons unleashed everything, pouring fire into the flagship's core while the beam burned around them. Explosions rippled along its surface. The glow of its weapon sputtered, stuttered, then shook violently. Inside the command chamber, the officers froze. One dared to speak. "She's destabilizing it." The Admiral's lips pressed into the faintest curve of a smile. "She's turning their storm against them." The flagship's core cracked. For a heartbeat, the stars fell silent. Then the core imploded. A shockwave of fire and metal ripped through the void, tearing enemy frigates apart, hurling the Ghost of Iron backward like a rag doll. The Academy's shields flared under the blast. Windows shattered. Lights died. When the fire cleared, the flagship was gone. Only burning wreckage remained. The control room erupted in cheers, cadets pounding the rails, officers gasping in disbelief. She did it! The human destroyed it! But the Admiral did not celebrate. His eyes narrowed as he studied the battlefield. The Ghost of Iron floated dark and silent among the wreckage. Its lights were gone. Its engines cold. No voice came through the comms. Arya Kane had vanished into silence, fade to black. The void was silent. Wreckage floated where the alien flagship had stood. Shards of black steel glowing red as they drifted into the endless dark. Fires burned in the vacuum, faint but unending. Around the Academy, enemy ships scattered in chaos, their formation shattered, their will broken. But the Ghost of Iron drifted motionless. Its lights were dead. Its hull was cracked and scorched, smoke leaking from shattered vents. To the cadets and officers watching from the station, it looked like a tomb. The control chamber buzzed with noise. Officers shouted for scans, searching for signals. Cadets crowded around screens, their eyes wide with fear, no life signs detected. The neural core has gone dark. She can't be gone. One cadet gripped the rail so hard his claws bent. His voice shook. No alien ever bonded with the ghost. No alien ever lasted inside it. And she did both. She can't die like this. Another whispered the truth aloud. She wasn't just any cadet. She was human. The fleet admiral stood silent above them all, his face hard as carved stone. But deep in his eyes something burned. Not grief, not loss. Something older. Something dangerous. He raised a hand. The chamber fell silent. Scan again. The officers obeyed, rerunning the search, reaching deeper into the wreckage. For long moments, only static filled the air. Then a faint pulse, one officer gasped. Signal detected. It's weak, but it's there. The ghost. It's alive. A cheer erupted across the chamber, cadets shouting, pounding the rails. But the admiral did not smile. He leaned closer to the display, studying the signal. It was faint, erratic, like a heartbeat fading in the dark. Inside the wreck of the ghost, Cadet Aria Kane floated in her seat. Her skin was pale, her breath shallow. The neural crown sparked, its circuits burned. She was barely conscious, but she could still feel the ship. The ghost whispered in her mind, its voice no longer cold and mechanical, but something more, something alive. You do not break, you do not fall, you are the exception. Her lips curved in the faintest of smiles. With the last of her strength, she reached for the controls. The ghost obeyed, its engines flared weakly. Its lights flickered back to life, glowing faintly against the void. Slowly, impossibly, the warship turned toward the academy. Inside the station, the cadets gasped. Alien jaws dropped. Entire rows of officers fell silent. The ghost of iron limped home. The hangar trembled as the giant vessel docked. Sparks rained from its hull. Armor plates fell away in chunks. But it was alive, and inside, so was its pilot. When the hatch hissed open, silence fell across the hangar floor. Hundreds of cadets crowded the rails above, staring down as smoke billowed out of the cracked warship. Then she appeared. Cadet Aria Kane stepped out of the haze. Her uniform scorched, her face pale, blood running down her temple. But her eyes burned with fire, unbroken, unbowed. The silence shattered. Cadets roared with cheers. Officers pounded their fists against the rails. Some shouted her name, others cried out a single word, "Humanity!" The fleet admiral descended into the hangar. His steps were heavy, deliberate. He stopped before her, his towering form casting a long shadow. For a long moment he said nothing. Then in a voice that carried across the hangar he spoke. The council said no cadet could survive Earth. They said no human could endure our trials. They said no one could master the ghost. He looked her in the eyes. But here you stand, alive, victorious, the exception. The cadets erupted again, their voices shaking the station itself, yet above the noise, the admiral's voice dropped low, meant only for her. The council will not be pleased. They will fear you, and they will fear humanity. Today you won us a battle, but tomorrow you may have started a war far larger than you can imagine. Aria's lips curved into a thin smile. Her voice was hoarse but steady. On Earth, we don't run from storms. We bring them. The admiral's eyes narrowed, then softened with the faintest hint of respect. Then prepare yourself, cadet, for the galaxy has just learned humanity's name. Above the academy, alien ships still burned. But across the stars, the news would spread. The Ghost of Iron had chosen its pilot, and that pilot was human. And for the first time in galactic history, the council trembled. Fade to black.